I've mentioned before that oftentimes after a fast, I'll find that it takes several days, at least a week most times, to actually start to fill back out. And it's kind of strange because you think, boy, I've been eating for a few days now, and yet the scale's not budging. And it is kind of weird. I just recently finished a fast where I did a dirty fast, having about 150 calories a day for 12 days. I lost a significant amount of weight, went from 229 down to 213, 214. And obviously, some of that's carbs and water and a significant amount of fat. Like, I don't know if you can see, my skin's nice and thin. I'm down from high teens into the mid-teens, I'd say, honestly. I want to give a quick update on my IGF-1 LR3 receptor grade experiment. I've been on that for right at a week now, I believe. At just under a week, maybe 6 days, I believe. And now I want to say that last time I fasted, I was in that deep quiescent state long after the fast. It was like day 6, 7, 8, something like that. And then I started to use oxytocin, the slow release, and to start that phase, the activation phase, the growth phase, and put those stem cells to work, right? And just one good dose, one 100 microgram dose of oxytocin kicked me right out of that state. It was clear as day. I took the dose, I went to bed. The next day I wake up and I'm 2-3 pounds fuller. It was just, instead of not taking anything in, my muscles just soaked up everything I had. So that has not happened with LR3 receptor grade. So I'm not saying that makes it inferior, but it's like I've theorized before that LR3 receptor grade isn't receptor grade in the way we might think in a very simplified way. It's not actually occupying the IGF-1 receptor. It's more apt to interact with and activate the IGF-1, MGF, that throughout that cascade. But I have theorized before that when you're in this fasted state, when you're in that particular state, I've theorized that IGF-1 LR3 receptor grade really acts as more of a precursor. And in that state, it's going to go down more the MGF pathway, which is more in line with the preservation and the deep quiescent state and all these types of things. So it's interesting to me. It's not kicking me out of it like the oxytocin did. It's just kind of going along with what I'm doing. And I've actually worked up to a pretty decent dose of 50 micrograms the last 3 days just to see what would happen. And no, it's just a continuation. In fact, I would say that I'm not necessarily even feeling more sluggish than normal or anything like that. So I think what people are experiencing when they experience that sluggishness in the gym and when they experience kind of certain side effects from IGF-1 LR3, I think what they're experiencing is just a taste of that deep quiescent state that I'm already in. So, drop in a bucket maybe for me. I don't know. But things just feel normal. It feels like I'm post-fast. Doesn't feel like anything different is happening. And this is the good stuff too. So, and again, I'm not putting it down. I'm saying I think it's doing what I want it to do. I think it's doing what it's supposed to do. And we will find out when I go to the oxytocin here in just a short while. And if my theory is correct, and this is working the way it should, last time around I gained between 2.5 to 3 pounds of muscle, and it was pretty easy to see that it was about half of what I had done my first time around, and that was what they say to expect after a 3-month waiting period. I did like a 3.5, 4-week waiting period or something. So just the fasting alone was able to be enough to get, the harvest that I was looking for. And so this time, if we do better than that, we will see that IGF-1 has added to the process because everything else is the same. The fast is the same length. The approach, the re-entry into normal eating is the same. So we'll see what happens. But that said, now I've been eating for over a week and I have not filled back out yet. I'm still weighing 213 pounds. And normally, if I ate the amount of carbs that I've been eating and the amount of protein and everything else, I would have put on 6 or 8 pounds by now. So why is this? Well, I've mentioned this before, and here's this study. This is just a quick summary of it. Fasting induces a highly resilient, deep quiescent state in muscle stem cells via ketone body signaling. So what they go on to describe here, and actually here's the full study. They describe that the ketone bodies themselves, the BHB and stuff like that, is actually acting on muscle stem cells in order to keep them from growing and becoming into play and using them for repair and that sort of thing. But where it gets interesting in this study is when we scroll down. The state that we're talking about is called deep quiescence, and they found that it exists during fasting but also persisted for several days after fasting in these mice. And they took biopsies of the muscles from the mice, and they found that there were differences in control mice, just mice being fed normally, and mice that were fasted. And here's some of their observations. And this really jumped out to me. Right here they say, however, surprisingly, we observed that a greater number of muscle stem cells from ketogenic mice, were present in culture after 48 hours of activation compared with their control counterparts. So there were actually a greater number of muscle stem cells in those that had gone through the fasted state. Here's my smoking gun, essentially, for what I've been saying, is the fasting promotes kind of a return to a youthful state and repairs actually quite a bit. Let's see, given the resistance of deep quiescent muscle stem cells to activation-induced death, we wanted to know if we could rescue the known survival impairments of old muscle stem cells by promoting KIDQ and deep quiescence. In order to address this, we injected After 1 week, we sacrificed the mice and isolated the muscle stem cells from the hind limbs. Quite strikingly, we found that ketone body treatment could indeed rescue the survival defects that are characterized of old muscle stem cell activation. So going through this fasted phase, or even a ketogenic phase, or by this study's results, using a ketone body may help revert old muscle stem cells to a more youthful state, but also protect the general population of muscle stem cells into a more resilient state, so that when it comes time to activate, more of them are stronger and survive the activation process. Yeah, indeed, treatment of isolated muscle stem cells with BHB during the primary ketone produced during fasting, produced a striking improvement in cell survival and a concomitant decrease in the rate of S-phase entry, blah, 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 consistent with. But basically what this gets into is that these muscle stem cells that from the fasted state, from the ketone bodies and everything, are more resilient to cell death. So when it comes time to call them into play, they're a lot more likely to survive that process. So that may be some of what we're seeing here. Now, this is going to get its own video, but along with my IGF-1 experiment, I had 3 bottles, so I've tried 3 different methods. And some of this, look, IGF-1 LR3 receptor grade is very long acting. It can be in the system for 2, 3, 4 days, something like that, according to some. But it is often, it's to be mixed with acetic acid and injected, a spot injection. I'm going to tell you something about acetic acid. I'm not a friend. I'm not a fan. I'm not a friend. I don't like it. It hurts. I hate those painful shots. So I looked into it, and essentially the reason that acetic acid is used is because it doesn't break down the peptide the same way that if you just put benzyl alcohol in there would. The same way benzyl alcohol would. But to understand this correctly, it's not that benzyl alcohol is harsher than acetic acid. In fact, acetic acid it's acid. I mean, when we want to talk about breaking something down, acetic acid is clearly more harsh than benzyl alcohol, but it's less evaporative, and that's the real issue when it comes to peptides and BA. So if you have your peptides sitting in benzyl alcohol, they'll have a tendency to become basically atomized and evaporate because benzyl alcohol is much more evaporative. So with that in mind, I have come up with a hydrogel that uses benzyl alcohol, but also two other things that, let's see, that's not true, three other things. But I'm kind of excited about it. You can probably tell. I'm kind of proud of it. But this is, well, for all intents and purposes, this is just an example of my hydrogel and not the LR3 receptor grade. But when we want to talk about a stable, pain-free, non-evaporative, safe for the peptide situation, we want to talk about a gel. And gels keep things from evaporating, gels keep things from breaking down, and what I've created here is a hydrogel. As you can see, it is thick, thick, thick. Ba-ba. Look at that. That is going nowhere. You have to draw that with an 18 gauge or else it ain't coming out. But a 25 gauge, smooth as silk and absolutely pain-free. So just kind of a fun development, pain-free injections of anything that would normally require acetic acid. In my opinion, in my slightly educated opinion, this solves the problem. So that's what I got for today. Kind of an all-around update, kind of a big information dump, but I just kind of wanted to get something out there and touch base and let you guys know what the state of my little research stuff was and how my little stuff's going, just to kind of keep the fire stoked. So hope you enjoyed. I'm looking forward to growing again once this deep quiescent state is over with. I hope you'll dig into this a little bit yourself, and if you have any questions, please just ask them below, because that's how I'll learn more too, is we'll delve into something and I'll look at it. So thank you for your participation of late, everybody that's been watching, everybody that's been jumping in, asking questions.